This is the Total Perspective Vortex. I'm Dragula,
And I'm Christian.
and it's July 2nd, 2020. And the craziness of 2020 continues. Now, we had Canada Day and some other things, but there's one story that came up earlier this week that we never gave the attention it deserved. And that's the McCloskeys. Do you remember the McCloskeys,
I sure
Christian?
do. There's some badass picks that have come out of that. Right.
So Christian, what happened with the McCloskeys?
Well, so the story goes that their gate was broken into, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a bunch of pictures of that online, and what they came out with their firearms and they said, back off. And as far as I understand, there was a lot of protesters that were kind of coming through, and that's it. They pushed them back. They just by brandishing firearms, which is what the ideal situation is, and right, rather than waiting for cops and then they come in and potentially start shooting, it's like just brandish your firearm, and that's enough for the criminals to go away. And I mean, that's probably the ideal situation, right? So definitely something very heroic about what they did.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to add. So it happened in St. Louis, and I think something that may slip through the tracks is the McCloskeys got this old house. It's almost 300 years old, I believe, and since the late 80s, 1988, they've been living there restoring it. So it's this heritage property that it's basically they've put their life work into the restoration of this building that they live in. Right.
Pictures on the inside, it's absolutely gorgeous in there.
Yeah. So you could see why they would be very concerned with protecting the property, what they built over their lifetime, personally. And it's a strange thing to still be calling people protesters when they break through the great gate into onto their private property, and then are mowing on like meandering on the lawn like a horde of zombies at that point, right? I think that there is something about this that has like sort of a zombie movie feel to it. Like this is sort of like what captures us about zombie movies is sort of this sense of
that's
societal
yeah.
breakdown and just the violation of norms like that.
Right. And Jordan Peterson has said at some point that he has tried to engage with some of these mob people, and they're in a sort of trance, a zombie-like trance. So he didn't use the word zombie, but he says you can't engage with them. They're like part of that mob. Yeah, they're in trance.
The ideological possession, right?
Right. But in that moment, right. Yeah, it's just maybe you could sit down with them later, but in that moment they are, zombie-like. So
it's like
that's a good analogy. Yeah.
And we do have that sort of a mob attack mentality where we go into a different mode when we're in a crowd like that. And if you could take one of those people out of the crowd and just interview them in a conference room, especially they put them in an environment that they know even would be even better, and they'd be like a completely different person. Like bring them back to their house and sit down with them in their house.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So there's sort of like a relationship with the environment in that, but the memes were awesome with the McCloskeys, and so that's something I found that was disappointing with that is their statements that they took
right.
the knee to Black Lives Matter. And this is something we saw with like the lawsuit in the Chaz as well. So a bunch of business owners put forth a lawsuit in the Chaz, and again they said, oh, we were really upset about the that the police aren't maintaining order, and the mayor hasn't stepped in, and we want to charge them for the negligence, but the protesters did nothing wrong, right? Or we support the movement. And it's
Well,
yeah,
I will defend them a little bit in the sense that Viva Fry, so YouTuber Viva Fry, he's a Canadian lawyer, and he went over their case, and he strongly does suspect that a lot of these people are saying these things because whether it's a jury trial or whoever's going to be, you know, overlooking this trial, they probably support BLM. So it's a good tactic to get them on your side. So I don't know, like we'll go through this case. I'm interested to see where we're going to go with this, but in the case of the businesses going after the
yeah.
politicians over this, they it is a dangerous ideological time, and I could see that some of them are doing this for that reason.
And this is like, again, why we're doing the podcast, why we have the Total Perspective Vortex, is we're trying to build that alternate moral framework, right?
Right.
Is it there is something fundamentally wrong with Black Lives Matter, and
Right.
and people chant all lives matter because they know intuitively that there's something wrong with Black Lives Matter, but they can't. The society's lost the moral fortitude to stand against that.
Right.
Right. So, and that's like with those judges and jury members, it's like you have, it's like it's making this exception. It's like, oh, you know, we can't say anything against the movement or the motivations of these people,
Right.
but oh, their actions were bad, right? And to a certain extent, that is like is true. You can you can criticize a person's actions without criticizing like their idealism that is behind those actions,
Right.
like you're just not going about this the right way. But what I really speaks to me about this is there's an absence of an alternate frame,
Right.
that we can use with any moral force. Like they can start shouting, "Oh, Black Lives Matter!" You don't get it. And there's no position we can defend with vigor or passion that's the alternate to that.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So, and like a clear example of this is what happened with Mount Rushmore, the Dem Mount Rushmore. So, are you familiar with this?
I've heard that there was something with the Democrats and Mount Rushmore, but just reading this
Okay.
this headline, no. So, and I'll read it out here. So, the Democrat Party begins demonizing Mount Rushmore, refers to 4th of July celebration as, quote, glorifying white supremacy, unquote.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I believe it was the DNC put out a tweet where they said that. Well, to give context, first, Trump yesterday. I haven't actually looked at the news this morning. I don't know what happened with this, but he was planning to have a fireworks event at Mount Rushmore.
Okay.
For the 4th of July.
Makes sense.
And the DNC put out a tweet saying that it was a celebration of white supremacy, and they quite clearly, in the context, were referring to the 4th of July being a celebration of white supremacy. And so that was the mask slipping, so to speak.
So they really have become, like, that's the DNC. So where I thought you would be going with this is that a few of the radical members of the DNC maybe have said it's glorifying white supremacy. This was directly a DNC tweet. So
Yeah, this is like official.
Yeah. Wow. So they've become radical.
Or they want to appear radical.
where they want to. That's a good point as well.
right? That they want to, they're cynically are exploiting that. I think that this is, there's a higher probability of of cynical exploitation where they're signaling, they want to signal virtue to this cause, right?
Fair
So
enough.
I don't know if they particularly believe it, but they see utility in saying they believe it.
Right.
And I think like, so, and then
Both
it's like,
are
how
scary.
do you, both are scary. And again, like we can stand against it, but we go, aha, oh, you made a violation, but we're not really pointing to the violation of like, again, like why is America great? Right? We don't even try and defend that ground. Like even Trump, it's like, let's make America great again. It's like this abstract sense of like, okay, but like what's so great about America, or what was so great about America? Like, you'll see people on the left constantly criticizing it and tearing it down and sit and tarnishing everything about it as bad, because like there are some bad things, as there are bad things with everything.
Right. Fair. Yeah.
But they play this disgust game where it's like, oh, it's like there's this slavery poop in your history, so we'll just smear everyone and everything that's done that is somehow associated to the slavery poop. And since they've touched the poop, or they were or someone who touched the poop has touched them, and like we can say that the whole thing now is as disgusting as slavery.
Right. Right.
Yeah, but where I wanted to go with this is this idea of extended compassion, right? Because I've talked about this before, about like how we have to build those tribal stacks, the well-oriented tribal stack,
Right.
of, you know, the best formed tribe is your family. That's what tribalism was really evolved for. So your family is your primary tribe, and it's governed by compassion, because you have your ability to pay attention and mediate your relation, like pay attention to the relationship with your immediate family members is the highest. So you can actually have that sort of high attention, high exception to the rural system, because you can really tailor your interactions with your family members, because they're so essential to your family. So, but as you go on, you then have like your friends and your community, your country, as of like sort of a well-formed tribal stack. It becomes more abstract and more rule-based out of necessity, because you don't have the capacity to pay that much attention to it. And where people on the left go wrong is sort of with the John Lennon, just imagine, let's tear down all the barriers, no countries, no religions, no yada yada yada. They want the appeal of that is that we treat everyone like family, that we have universal compassion for everybody.
If can you bring back up that tweet, or the last the news article?
Which one? The Dems Mount Rushmore?
Yeah.
So
my question to you is, if you had an elevator pitch right now about why this is wrong to a conservative, let's say you're sitting there, you're in an elevator, and you have like all of maybe 2 minutes, let's say, so a long elevator ride, but and you wanted to explain how to talk about this, what would you say to politicians? How can they properly defend this?
Country's important.
Country's important. Okay.
Like that's like in a the well-formed tribal stack is one way of defending it. Is, like I've said before, the my life matters, my family matters, my friends matter, my community matters, my country matters. I mean, if we say these things are important, then I am in the best position to be stewards of these things. So I need to care about these things. right?
Okay.
So like we talked about, like, and again, like there was the all lives matter. Uh, doesn't lead to all countries matter. All countries matter doesn't have the same resonance as all lives matter, because all lives matter is it's a statement about your individual interactions, that you have to treat each person like a individual, a spark of consciousness.
Right.
But why your country matters, and why your family matters, and why you should celebrate these things, is because they're an extension of a well, if you're well oriented, they're an extension of yourself and your responsibilities.
Right. And
Right. So yeah, and so actually I'll segue into like where I was going with the John Lennon, because that's the alternate perspective when they're saying, when they come back with sort of like an all countries matter globalist perspective, is that we'll tear down all the borders, like, and then we'll treat, like, I mean, we know you love America, but wouldn't it be better if you just loved a whole world like you loved America?
right.
Right. And then and it, that but it doesn't that work that way, because what actually happens is that your compassion is like a limited resource. So let's say your compassion is like water, okay? And you actually have to, if you want to have to compassion to be meaningful at all, you have to keep it in some sort of container or boundary. And that's what a tribe really is. It's sort of a tub of compassion. You can think of it. So like, and think of like an outdoor swimming pool, an above ground outdoor swimming pool. That's your compassion. Okay.
Okay.
Right now, like the John Lennon uh, Maoist cultural revolution solution is like, okay, let's just break down that wall that's holding in the water, right? And then we'll have compassion all over the place. So you then smash the side of of your swimming pool, and then you have the compassion go all out over the field, and what you end up with is a muddy, wet lawn, right? With puddles of compassion, right? So you're not really concerned about the white people in middle America, but you're super duper concerned about the dolphins in Japan, or it's because there's like there's like a puddle there that's occurred of where your compassion has gone. And because that's one of the things, they don't just want to extend it out, like the hardcores is like, or the animal liberation types, like that expanding circle. They want you to treat like all sentient beings with compassion, and that's just where they've put it now. I mean, like, they're talking about plant allies in the Chaz. So
Say
the
again.
plant allies in the Chaz.
What is? I mean, what
That
does
was a
that
joke.
mean?
Don't
Oh,
no.
okay. No, no. Is
No segue here.
who knows? Welcome to 2020, right? Like
Okay,
this could
yeah,
be, yeah, that could not be that could be a sincere, right?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But my point is here that, like, the compassion spills out, and then it's you end up with no compassion, or compassion in small puddles of places where it doesn't really, it isn't really useful,
Right.
right? So
That's interesting.
and you have no swimming pool. The water doesn't get off the ground. Like, you spread your attention too thin, and it's gone in erratic places. You spend your compassionate energy too thin, and your consideration isn't actually doing anything productive. So what you actually, I think you really have to look at it is instead like a well-formed tribal stack is like a set of cascading pools, where the highest pool is in the center is your family, and then you have, like, outside of that pool you have a larger pool that's the water level is a little lower, is your friends, and then you have a larger pool where the water level is a little bit lower, and the edges of the wall are a little bit lower, and that's your community. And then finally you have an even larger pool where the water level and the walls are a little bit lower, and that's your country, right? So your compassion is mostly focused on your family, but as you go out, you still have compassion for these things. You still celebrate these things.
Right. That's an interesting analogy for sure.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a and I think that that's a better way of looking at it and a better way of discussing it, because I don't know if like there's room for improvement. Like where does your job come into this? Your role into society, because that's maybe like you do need to have some sort of loyalty to your career or your trade as well. And how does that work into it, or what is your or your coworkers in that sense? And if you have a religious community, is that different than your civic community? So there's grounds for discussion here. But I want to what I'm trying to do is have a framework and an alternative to what's being proposed, that these things have intrinsic value in, and how in our compassion is a resource that we have to attend to, and how we divvy it out, or else it's going to be spread too thin and it's going to be meaningless, and you're going to have people bleeding about all these bizarre issues and how they, it's a super duper concern to them. What's happening to the ducks in Central Park, but they're not.
You don't care about what's going on about the ducks in Central Park. You're
yeah, but they don't even care about their own family. Like, that's a big thing, and you'll see that with a lot of leftists, and why they're so concerned with these big issues is because their families are a mess.
That's interesting. They don't have those other things aren't ordered.
Yes,
that would make
exactly.
sense. And then where do you place your attention? Definitely not on things that matter.
Yeah,
right.
Because it's difficult too
within
to
your
attend to those things.
Yeah.
So this is why we go with the Black Lives, like why attending to family is so important, and we have to discuss it, right?
Are you telling me my fight for snails in Thailand is maybe misplaced?
Yeah, possibly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and maybe look into that after.
So that's food for thought for today, and I think it's a good place to wrap it up.
Sounds good.
All right, take care.
Take care. Cheers.